Hey, look at us out on our bikes. Welcome to Ridercam TV again. And it's been a long time in lockdown, so we're just trying to get back into doing some stuff. And what we're going to do today, just see, I've got a group of riders in front of us and Toby's actually behind me. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, a car driver, and they were talking about motorcyclists and how bad they are. And I had to agree that, you know, there are a lot of bad motorcyclists around on the road. There's also a massive amount of good ones, which is the positive thing. So what we're doing here now is I'm following Steve from North Coast Motorcycles, based here in deepest, darkest Cornwall on Perranporth Airfield. Actually, we're just leaving the airfield now, and he's got a couple of students in front of him. And what I hope to explain is the reason you probably see two quite drastically different types of motorcycling in this video. So the first one we're going to explain here is CBT type riding. So these guys are just in the process of doing their CBT. They're out for their little final part of their day, which is not a test ride, but it's a competence ride, let's call it that. And they'll be riding to the standards set by the CBT for their direct access course and things like that. So there are many different types of riding, obviously some idiots riding, and there are people who like this who are just doing their basic skills, which they're qualified then to ride on the road up to a 125, I think it is, for 2 years on L plates. Good Lord, man, the lady there strangling a dog. And you've got the type of riding which Toby will demonstrate afterwards, which we call advanced style riding, which is a completely different setup. So what these guys are being taught basically is to be safe on the road, which is great because they need to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't adhere to the rules once they've actually qualified, and you know, they're the muppets you see driving through traffic, you know, dangerously, and go on to have accidents. And it's a sad fact that motorcyclists account for about 1% of the traffic on the road, but for about 26% of all the accidents. Now that's not necessarily them causing the accident, but they're involved in accidents. So what we have in front is these guys, and basically they're told to stay in a safety bubble, and the safety bubble, as far as they're concerned, is to stay right in the centre of the road, which is what they're doing now. And that's why you see these guys who are on these 50cc motorbike scooters and things like that, and they driving what you would say frustratingly, because they're in the middle of the road blocking up traffic, you know, which is annoying for other traffic users. But you have to understand that these guys are on bikes that are capable of probably about 45 miles an hour, and this is what they've been taught to do. And the reason they've been taught to do that is because it is safe. If they're in the middle of the lane, what you're experiencing as a car driver is the fact that you can't get past them. Now if they were to ride in the left hand side of the lane all the time, you as a car driver would come up behind them and go, well, I can get through there. And that's what you don't want to do, because once you start overtaking them, if something was to come around one of these bends, we're on some windy roads now, okay, and you're halfway through your overtake, you've got a motorcyclist on a little 50cc bike at the side of you, a car comes round in front of you, what's going to be sacrificed? And my estimation would be it's easier to damage the motorcycle than it is to hit the car that's coming towards you. And that's the frustrating part of riding behind people on motorcycles who are riding in this fashion. But they're being safe. By stopping you overtaking them, it means that, you know, they are maintaining a safety bubble around them. Now, having many years bike experience, I know how frustrating this can be for car drivers, because these bikes are, you know, we're doing 27 miles an hour now downhill, and this is the first time they've ridden on the road. So it's quite it's quite an eye-opener for them. But this is how they're trained to ride, and it's not their fault. This is just how they're told to do it. They're not actually looking as far ahead as you would expect them to do it in other types of riding. They're just concentrating on their position and what they're trying to achieve, which is a safe ride along a road, which they may not have been along before. And to be honest, these bikes that they've got, 125, 50cc, whatever they are, you know, might not be capable of doing more than 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. So you wouldn't expect them to do anything else necessarily. You'll notice that because they're new riders, they're not actually paying that much more attention to their surroundings as I would as an advanced rider. And it's not bragging, it's just the way that we're taught to ride is completely different to the way they are taught to ride. When they go around a bend, they're taught to maintain the centre line of the lane. Okay, so they get the best view around the bend. Okay, the safest view if you want. They can actually see further by moving across the lane in either direction. That's, you know, but you know, we're talking people here who've not got that much experience necessarily. That narrow bit of road there, if the guy at the front was riding quite far over to the left, and the vehicle only stopped coming up because the guy who's in front of me, Steve, actually put himself out a little bit wide to see around the corner on their behalf, if you want, and that was enough to make that car stop and give him the space he required. So these bikes are mostly twist and go, so they don't have any gears. They're just you know, scooter type things, so they're going to go at not necessarily blistering pace, but they can't accelerate faster really than, you know, than they already are at the moment. Quite underpowered bikes, but they fit a purpose. You know, these are not going to be guys who are going on tour, you know, on these, although I'm sure people have. These are guys who are going to be commuting, ladies and gentlemen, you know, backwards and forwards to work, 4 or 5 miles, 6 miles, you know, commute. I'm sure people do longer, but that's what we're talking about here. So the only experiences they're going to have will be in possibly a little bit of town driving, maybe a little bit of country driving like these guys are now experiencing now. And so all I'm asking is like a little bit of forgiveness on your behalf whilst riding behind them. They're not doing it to frustrate you in any way, they're doing it because it's the safest place for them to be on the road. Now if they were to ride over in the right hand side completely blocking you, that would be very frustrating. As a car driver, I understand that. But the fact that they've got an L plate on is an indication of their experience in many cases. So, you know, we were all learners at some point. Some of us are of the view that you never stop learning, and that's a good thing. So give them a little bit of space. There's no point getting right up behind them because you're not going to make them go any faster, because in many cases they're going as fast as they possibly can anyway. So passing your frustrations onto them and causing anxiety is really a pointless exercise. You wait till you get to a nice wide open road like this and you might be able to overtake them. But you can see now how they're all riding in the centre of the road. Okay, not necessarily looking around them to be aware of their surroundings, but they're riding in the centre of the road. Nothing can necessarily overtake them. We're only in a 40 mile an hour limit. We're doing 30 miles an hour at the moment. So this is their particular style of riding, and that's how it is. On these courses you might get an instructor and 2 riders, and you might find them on bigger bikes, and they're doing their upgraded direct access course up to a 500cc, and their riding is exactly the same for the same reasons but they're just riding bigger bikes, so necessarily their speed will be a bit quicker, and they won't necessarily be holding you up as much as you would think. Another thing about these guys is you might see that their observations aren't as good as other people's. They're concentrating very much on what's in front of them. That's possibly just an individual thing, you know. They're not necessarily that concerned. They've got mirrors, whether they use them or not is something else. But this is what they're doing. You know, they're turning corners. They're a bit wobbly on the bends. Things like gravel is going to put them off. But their course is, I think it's about 8 hours, and it's not a test at the end of it. It's just it's just a competence. So they have to be competent in certain aspects of that. And we're gonna do a video with Steve and his gang a bit later on, where Toby and I are hopefully going to pass our CBTs, just so we can understand what it is that they have to achieve. Now we're on a nice open road here. They managed to get up to 35 miles an hour on these little scooters they've got, so they're not expecting to ride really fast. But the way it works is, it's 8 hours of riding, or you know, training, which involves all sorts of different things. We'll go into that on a different ride. But then when they come out on this, they've got to be competent. Now if they're not competent at the end of this ride, they don't get signed off. Steve was explaining to me that, you know, he has a moral obligation to make sure they are competent. Some people may not, other organisations might not be as strict as that, you know, but he feels he has a moral obligation to make sure that they are competent enough to ride safely on the road, and that's what he tries to achieve. And I think that's a really, really good thing to have. You know, it might cost him more money. It doesn't cost them any more money. They've just got to achieve the competencies. And I know some organisations aren't necessarily bothered with that, but that's a good thing. So we've followed them for a while now, so you've got a reasonable understanding of how they're riding. And what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how Toby and I ride, and other advanced style riders, and at the end of that we'll be explaining the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to the way they are doing things. You see how we slowed right down on this bend, down to 17 miles an hour. Okay, and the guy in front of us is braking really quite hard, and this is basically a new rider trying to get used to riding a bike. You know, people have ridden bikes but haven't necessarily ridden motorbikes before, so this is all very new. It's a bit unreal to them. So if you can understand that as a car driver following them, you basically know where they're coming from. Okay, so what we're just going to do at the bottom of this hill is pull off, and we're going to say goodbye to these guys. Okay, here we are now. We've just got rid of, or not got rid of, we just left Steve and his two compatriots. What we're going to do now is just going to, Toby's in front. We're just going to do the same road that they're just doing now, but we're going to do it in the fashion that Toby and I have been taught to ride in as advanced riders. It's not to brag or anything like that, it's just to show the difference in how we use the road, as opposed to a guy who's just done his CBT or his direct access course, just so we can show you the comparisons. Now, if you remember, if you were watching closely enough, some of you may or not, the guys who were riding in front of us were very, very central in the road. Heads weren't moving very much with regards to looking around for observations. You might see that Toby's now looking constantly in his mirrors, head swiveling all the time, but also he's wider on the road. So we've explained this before, how we're looking for the view, and how you read about this in bike magazines. You know, people say, oh, you know, limiting line and limiting point and all this kind of stuff, and you know, nobody ever does it, do they? Let's be honest, no one ever does it unless you've been taught to do it. You know, it's a hard thing to actually quantify and understand. So we're coming to a national speed limit, which is a 60 mile an hour road. Toby's looking over his shoulder there to make sure no one's trying to get the jump on him or they're too close. Instantly he's up to speed. Okay, but you'll notice how he's all over the road. He's using the road to get the best view. Now when I say that, he's looking so far ahead in front of that car in front of us. We're looking for overtakes, and we're looking for views around bends. So we can see the road just over the top of his head there, and he'll be coming over to the left hand side. I'm trying to anticipate what he's doing so I can show you more. Okay, we're doing 35 miles an hour down a 60 mile an hour road that's almost straight, and the car in front of us has been braking all the way down, which isn't unusual. Toby's nice and wide on this bend. Lots of observations. You can see his head turning. Okay, he moved up to the 1 second position there behind the car in case there was an overtake, but it's not the best place to overtake along this road. But you'll see now, he was going around this left hand bend, he was right over on the right. As we come to the next right hand bend, he's right over on the left, and that is vastly different from the way the guys were riding previously, the guys we were following. They're taught to be right in the centre of the road, they're just riding in the centre. Doesn't matter, they're not being expected to look further around the bend so they can maintain steady speeds or anything like that. It's just what they're doing. They were doing hardly any observations, which is not a criticism, it's just the fact that that's what they do. It's interesting to note that although this is a 60 mile an hour road, and as a motorbike you could probably ride it close to that most of the time, the car in front is doing a steady 30 to 35 miles an hour, using lots of braking. So here we go now, you'll see there's nothing in front of us at the moment, so Toby's nice and wide, coming in for the best view around the next bend. If you imagine we came down this road before doing 35 miles an hour, up to 50 miles an hour now, easily. Okay, so this is the difference between the CBT type rider and an advanced rider. CBT rider might be able to do 50 miles an hour, but certainly wouldn't be doing 50 miles an hour along here necessarily. It certainly wouldn't be using the amount of road that we're using here now, or Toby's demonstrating in front of us. So that's just what we're trying to explain. Two different types of motorcycle riding, both very similar, both trying to achieve the same thing: safety on the road. They're doing it by riding in the centre of the road to keep a safety bubble around them. We're riding progressively with a safety bubble around us, but also maintaining good observations in front, behind, with the ability to overtake if necessary. Just like that. Luckily we've got the power to be able to do that. Lots more observations. So I think if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. There's my thumbs up. Toby will put a subscription thing on. This isn't, I know we get criticised by lots of different organisations for whatever. We're just trying to demonstrate as best as we can two different types of riding and the reasons why people are doing it. I know people are going, oh, you shouldn't be doing that because this, and you shouldn't be doing that because that. Well, We've just followed some guys who are doing CBT, and we've just shown you how we ride as an advanced rider. So comments are always welcome. Nice positive ones are even better. We're just happy to be out on our bikes making videos again, so you guys can watch us. So if you give us a thumbs up, subscribe, do the subscribe button somewhere along there. Toby does all that, he's really good. And we've got some more videos coming. We've got some great ideas, we've got some bikes to review. And also, in case you didn't realise, we've got some merchandise that we have been asked to provide for people. People want to buy stuff, so we've got some hoodies, some t-shirts, stickers, and a mug, I think, which is always nice. Which is all available on our website, and they send it to you. Just as an aside, we both carry stickers, and if you come across us in a car park somewhere, we've always got stickers to hand out to people, and they're slightly different to the ones that you get on the website. So that's a bit of interest for you, isn't it? So I'll speak to you again, and keep safe, and we'll see you soon.